I'm currently out on my 2023 Kawasaki KLR650, but in about 20 minutes I'll be test riding the new 2026 KLE500. The real question's going to be, which bike am I going to be riding home? Hi there and welcome to another Adventure Bikes Australia video. My name is Ben and I'm not an expert motorcycle mechanic or motorcycle rider in any way whatsoever. As motorcyclists, we always love the new shiny thing, and the newest shiny thing from Kawasaki is the KLE500. Now, I used to own a GPZ 500 back in the day, admittedly a road bike, so it's going to be interesting to see if this modern iteration of that bike carries through any of the characteristics of that old bike. Can't wait to find out. A quick disclaimer before we get started. This is not a sponsored video. It was a brand new bike. It's not even run in, and I rode the base model, not the SE. And lastly, this is a short on-road test ride, so there's no off-road information here, but I did manage to find a few twisties, a little motorway, and even a few speed bumps. First impressions. So walking up on this bike, it is sexy looking. The front end is very aggressive and modern. The rest of it is styled exactly as you'd expect an adventure bike to be. It really looks the part of a modern adventure motorcycle. I did look at it and think that the tank looked a bit high, a bit like a Tenere or a CFMoto 450 MT, but I wanted to reserve judgment till I actually had a chance to ride the thing. I was hoping to be able to ride the white one with the green details, just because I think that looks the coolest, but it looks like we don't even get that one in Australia. Bummer. Now let's talk about the motor. The first thing that stood out to me was the acceleration. This thing feels amazing. It feels like lightning after riding the KLR, probably because it's got 20% more horsepower than the KLR. Keep in mind that I've only ridden my KLR for the last 4 years, and I hadn't ridden a motorbike at all for about 10 years before that. But the 450cc twin-cylinder engine in this KLR, it accelerates strongly through every gear, it revs high through every gear, and sounds amazing when giving it a bootful. One thing that really impressed me was just how smooth this motor feels. It's virtually vibration-free under 90 kilometers an hour. However, once I got above 90 kilometers an hour, it strangely had more vibration than my KLR. I could really feel it in my feet and in my hands. That was something that was really surprising. But that said, it wasn't terrible. Out on the motorway, the engine had good roll-on power in every gear, and it felt good on the motorway. I did, however, feel myself almost doing the KLR thing and looking for an extra gear. Even though this does have a 6-speed gearbox, I did kind of feel like maybe I might want another gear. The KLR is often criticised for engine braking, but on the KLE it felt normal and natural, and it didn't stand out as either too much or too little. It was just right. The gearbox for me was an absolute standout. Every shift feels surgically precise, up and down. It all just worked together beautifully, and the combination with the motor was just spot on. The clutch was very light and easy to operate, and the three of those things together, the motor, the gearbox and the clutch, it was just magic. It felt so good. Moving on to the handling, as I said at the top, I did not get a chance to go off-road, so this is strictly street and motorway only. I thought that the suspension felt really good on the street, and even when I managed to hit a few unexpected speed bumps, it seemed to handle them really well. I did automatically revert into a standing position, but even so, it still felt awesome. The handling on the road is really sharp, and in the couple of twisties that I did find, it felt really great. This is probably partially due to being substantially lighter than the KLR, 20-ish kilos, and you can really feel that on the street. Despite having that tall tank I mentioned before, it didn't feel top heavy or unwieldy at all, and in fact it felt incredibly nimble and flickable. It also felt significantly thinner than the KLR, making lane splitting far more comfortable and less intimidating. The brakes were a bit of a split decision for me. The front brake felt really sharp and powerful. I liked that it had such good stopping power, and it came on quick and early, and I felt really confident grabbing a handful of front brake. It was a standout and much better than the KLR. The back brake was a different story. It felt quite vague, and when stopped on a slight decline at a traffic light, I really had to press the lever at full power in order to get the bike to not roll down the hill. Typically I find with motorcycle brakes, particularly the rear brake for holding on a hill, you depress as hard as you can to get it to stop, or as hard as you need to stop, but then once it actually stopped, you can let up a little bit and not have to stand there with your muscles tense jamming that pedal down. It just wasn't that case here. I think the best way to sum up the handling of the KLE is that a lot of people say a KLR handles well for a bike its size. The KLE just straight up handles well. Talking about ergonomics now, the bike felt bang on for my size. I'm 183 centimeters tall, 6 foot tall. I don't know what my inseam is, have never measured it. And unlike a lot of dudes, I don't feel the need to measure my physical sizes. The seating position felt beautiful to me. Everything just felt in the right place. The handlebars, the foot pegs, it all just came together really well. It is a very upright seating position, which I love, and it felt very commanding out on the road. I'd say probably even more so than my KLR. The standing position likewise felt really good. Now I did not spend a whole lot of time standing up, but I did spend a couple of minutes just to judge the geometry of the bike, and it all felt really good together. I joked about my inseam before, but I really don't know what that is, but I could flat foot the bike with no worries at all. This was a bit of a surprise, particularly after a lot of reviewers are talking about the height of the seat. I really thought it was going to be an issue, but it just wasn't. The mirrors are very funky and a nice modern shape, and they offered great visibility, much better than my KLR, but that's probably more due to the vibrations of the KLR than anything else. I felt like they gave me a nice wide spread of what was happening not just behind me, but also beside me, which is really important. The switchgear was all very logically laid out, and as expected on a Japanese bike, it felt like very high quality. Now, no bike is perfect, and there were a couple of things I found that I didn't like. The first one was the dash. The base model comes with an LCD dash, and it was quite hard to see in the daylight at times. The SE model does have a color screen. I'm told it's much better, but that one wasn't available for test ride today. Another thing I didn't like was the blinkers on the base model. They're exactly the same as the old school KLR blinkers. You'd think on a 2026 brand new model bike that they'd steer clear of incandescent bulbs. Unfortunately, I think they've just recycled these from the KLR parts bin. Again, the SE model has LED blinkers and they look a lot better. I found the windscreen fairing to be too small and buffeting was high on the very short stretch of motorway I did. The SE model does have a much larger windscreen and I can see why you would go for that. It's perfectly fine up until about 80 Ks, but faster than that you really start to feel it. Staying on topic with the windshield, both the SE and the base model, they're adjustable in inverted commas, like the KLR windshield is adjustable. In these days where even the cheap Chinese bikes have a simple on-the-go adjustment system, it's a real pain that we're going to have to get the tools out to change the windshield height. I really thought they could do better than that. Next up, I thought the bash plate was just too small. It barely sort of covered the frame on the sides of the bike, and I thought it could definitely be expanded. Now the bash plate on the SE model does have more coverage, but it's still the same thin metal as the base model. So I think no matter which one you went for, you'd still be upgrading that first. I did mention the rear brake before, and I thought the rear brake was pretty terrible. However, speaking to the guy back at the bike shop, he did point out that the bike was brand new, brand new, and so the brakes may not even be bedded in properly yet. So I'll give that a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, and brakes are adjustable, so maybe that's not the end of it, but that's where I was on the brakes. The seat is next up. It does feel like a very sporty seat. If the KLR feels like a big soft lounge chair, this definitely feels like a sporty chair. I don't know, but it feels sporty. It was great for my little blast around town and a little bit in the twisties and the motorway, but I think it would get quite uncomfortable after an hour or so. Now the next point is more of a general impression, I guess, than anything else, because I can't say for certain because I didn't do any off-roading, but it doesn't feel like it would be that good off-road. It definitely does not have the tractor factor of the KLR. First gear feels like it wouldn't be low enough for off-roading, not my style of off-roading anyway. If you're a point it and blast it type of rider, you'll probably love it. But my opinion isn't particularly worth anything at this stage because I didn't get to do any actual off-roading on it. One thing that did stand out to me though is that the KLE doesn't come across as being adventure ready straight out of the box. For example, there's no luggage rack or grab handles to use as tie downs, which the KLR comes with at the right-of-way price. On the KLE, you'd have to add these as optional extras. And the last point was the colours. I would definitely prefer the green and white available on the SE in other countries, and I just don't understand why they didn't give it to us here in Australia. The black was nice, the green is nice, but to me, the white is where it's at. So what are the things that really stood out to me as positive points for the KLR? Well, I mentioned it before, the motor and gearbox combo, they feel perfectly mated. I cannot overstate this. This bike is really fun to ride on the street, and it felt pretty good on the motorway. At 100 kilometers an hour, it did feel like it was working hard, but it might need to be run in and have its first service, and then who knows after that. It is really fun to twist that throttle and rev it out, and it feels like it loves it and says, yeah, give me more. The seating position was a winner for me, and I loved the clear front fairings for visibility. I thought that was a really neat touch, and I haven't seen any other manufacturers do that before, so points to Kawasaki for that one. And the overall build quality looks good too. The Japanese precision and quality is everywhere you look, including the paint. Now, I did say that I prefer the white, but that's not to say that the black and the green look bad. The metallic in the paint looks beautiful on both of them. And the last thing I want to talk about is the suspension. A lot of people in these reviews are bagging the suspension, but I didn't hate it. In fact, it felt much better to me than the standard KLR suspension. If this had been an off-road review and I'd found ground clearance to be a problem, I'd suggest just waiting for YSS to come up with a lift kit like they did for the Transalp and just go with that. The YSS kit that I put on my KLR absolutely transformed that bike, and if anybody doesn't like the KLE suspension, I would recommend you look into that.
Okay, so spoiler alert, I'm on my way home on my KLR. Not because I didn't like the KLE, I actually really quite liked it a lot. And here's the thing, if both bikes had been available at the end of 2022 when I bought this 2023 KLR, I gotta say I probably would have been leaning towards the KLE because it's so much more punchy and fun on the road. Now that said, at the time, I was also absolutely adamant that I was going to ride this KLR up through Cape York Peninsula. And I'm not sure that the KLE500 would be my first choice of bike for that particular task. Now, fast forward nearly 4 years, and I could be a bit more honest with myself about what kind of riding I'm actually doing. There's not actually a whole lot of off-roading to be done around the Gold Coast here. All of our state forests and national parks are all closed. It's a minimum 2-hour drive in any direction out of the Gold Coast before I can get anywhere near a dirt road. So back to my original point, if I was tossing up between the KLR and the KLE and I hadn't ridden a bike in a long time, I was getting back into motorcycling like I was, I'd probably be leaning towards the KLE. The up-spec KLR and the up-spec KLE, they come in roughly the same money. I'll put it up here on the screen. And I gotta say, it would be a really tough choice. There's lots to love about the KLE, there's lots to love about the KLR. To be honest, he did try to give me a trade-in deal on my KLR, but I'm just too broke at the moment. But I do have to say this, and I will finish with this. I think I am a twin-cylinder convert. Anyway, if you'd like to know more about how you can make your KLR better off-road, I have a fantastic video for you, and it's right over here.